You know, we're often told, aren't we, that, well, according to sources at least, the royals are famously not amused. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up and looking at Queen Elizabeth at events, I always thought that she really kept her humour in check. And as, of course, you develop in this particular job, you find out that, in fact, Queen Elizabeth had a raucous sort of sense of humour with a spot-on impressionist sort of tack, as it were. She could meet somebody and very quickly pick out the sort of nuances of their accent or an affliction or something like that, and then do an accurate impression. Apparently world leaders were picked up very, very quickly, and many senior courtiers and stuff at the time would wonder, well, when she met someone, how quickly she would pick up on maybe one of their instances, as they called it, fast enough to turn it round into an impression. Never cruel, but she just liked the idea of thinking, okay, this is exactly how somebody is. Maybe she would have been good on Spitting Image. That was a programme, apparently, according to a well-placed source. The Queen sort of didn't mind it. The Queen Mother found it very funny, and the Duke of Edinburgh hilariously funny. But not everybody did, including, as you can imagine, senior politicians. But this particular story today comes from a gentleman who himself was something of a comedy legend. He is, of course, Mike Winters, from the double act Mike and Bernie Winters. I became friendly with Mike a few years back now, and I interviewed him for his book, and obviously I'd seen him as a child on shows and TV specials and stuff like that. They were the sort of ITV equivalent to Morecambe and Wise. Some people say not as funny, others say just as funny. It just depends on your comedic taste, doesn't it? That's the thing about comedy. What makes one person laugh certainly doesn't make another. Mike was a wonderful friend though, and just a great raconteur.
Entertainment news. I'm surrounded by a comedy legend with the one and only Mr. Mike Winters, who tells us all about his latest book, The Sunny Side of Winters. Remember though, Mike?
If you miss it, you miss out.
Don't miss Mike today on your entertainment
If
news.
you miss it, you miss out.
You've got it, well done.
Yeah. Can I say it again?
Say it again.
If you miss it, you miss out.
Thank you, Mike.
He literally worked with everybody, met everybody from the Beatles, appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show. They'd done it all. And they were very clever. But as he pointed out, comedy was totally different back in the day. You could be inventive, all of that sort of stuff. We both agreed, though, that one person that truly did make us both laugh, really without doing too much, was in fact this comedy legend. That's right, Tommy Cooper. But what does he have to do with our royal story of the day? Let me explain. Morning, chums. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on a very nice, humid and hot day here in London town. I hope you're keeping well. We haven't had a wave, have we? Who makes you laugh? Yeah, you can share it with me. It doesn't matter to me who it is, does it? And does your comedy taste change? I don't know about you, I still find Dick Dastardly and Motley funny, and I still love Scooby-Doo, as many people know on this show. And I think if you can laugh every single day, even at the absurdities of life, you sort of get through it, don't you? And I often say, and this is true, having met and spent time with so many wonderful comedians, they can be very melancholic, behind the scenes. Mike Winters was no different. It was a business to him. He knew what made people laugh. But as I said, we both had been lucky enough to meet the brilliant legend that was Tommy Cooper, who tragically died on stage, live on television, in front of a big audience. But as many people pointed out, that probably would be the way that he'd want to go, making people laugh. But way back in 1955, inadvertently to him, he struck up an absolute wonderful friendship with Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. They were both at the Savoy Hotel, and he'd been asked to sort of just perform a trick, and without actually asking permission, as I say, this is way back in 55, he asked the Duke if he'd just assist him in the trick. This was unheard of. They very quickly bonded, and Prince Philip howled with laughter. They instantly became friends for many years, and Tommy was invited to perform at various private events. But the tricky thing came up when, in 1981, it came to the thorny topic of the Duke's 60th birthday. You see, he said, as you can imagine, I don't want any fuss, I don't want any, fanfare and bells and all that. No. But basically, even though he was continuing to work on that day, hosting a charitable event, the Queen, very nicely, according to Mike Winters behind his back, called in Tommy Cooper. And here's where it gets funny. It just tells you everything you need to know about really what goes on inside royalty. Because according to Mike, you see, Tommy thought, oh, okay, right, I'm going to come in and yes, you want me to say a few words. And the Queen said, oh, no. I'd like you to build something round, come up with something. And he said, well, I presume, you don't want his age mentioning because I know he's a little bit, Oh, no. She said, we must rib him about that. No, Tommy, you must come up with some jokes. And there's elements of it that you can see on YouTube. And apparently, according to Mike Winters, literally the Queen and Tommy cultivated this sort of narrative of speech and the jokes that he could do, what he could get away with. And she said, oh, don't worry about him looking daggers or anything like that. Secretly, he loves it. He loves you. He thinks you're a brilliant comedian. Apparently afterwards, the show, as I say, there are elements of it on YouTube, went down an absolute storm. And as you can imagine, the Duke of Edinburgh came up to Tommy and called him something of an expletive, but said, terrific show, thank you. I was dreading turning 60. You've made it a birthday to remember. Apparently when he got back to the palace, according to Tommy a few years later, he said, how did it go down with the Queen? And he said, don't give me that. You knew about this all along. So finally it eked it out of the Queen. And Tommy Cooper had literally made, as I say, the Duke of Edinburgh's birthday one special occasion, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. Nobody likes hitting those milestone birthdays. But if you can laugh through it, as I said at the start of the video, then you're on to winning in life. Anybody else agree? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.